Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast. We're on episode number 222. I'm not sure what we're summoning with that particular episode number, but we're here. I'm Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and author interviews. This week I have 4 new reviews for you folks at home, and it's also the third week of the quarantine mustache, coming in quite nicely, along with the quarantine stubble beard. So there you go. This week I have 4 reviews for you, and that includes Apocalypse Gates book number 6 in the series called Can of Worms. Also Carrion Crow, which is a new series. Then Quell, The Destiny Rising, which is a short story prequel to the author series. And last but not least, Eastbound and Town, the 8th book in the Good Guy series. So 4 new reviews for you. Before we get into any of that, of course, we're going to go into LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news, we only got a couple stories for you this week. That is going to start off with Sergei Zaitsev. He's an author of the translated series Universe ICS, and he has made a plea to readers to repost the reviews after Amazon took down his novels and banned his account. I guess there was some issue with a few Russian translated novels who had large portions of their stories online somewhere. And Amazon, if you're in the Kindle Unlimited program, there's a clause there saying you can't have more than 10% as a sample anywhere on the internet, no matter whether it's you or somebody else. Can't have more than 10%, and so that might have been part of this account being taken down and the novels having to be republished. But either way, the author has his stuff back up for you to enjoy, but he did lose all the reviews that he had for the account for the novels, and he's asking if you've read it, please just repost your review. It'll help him out, and if you haven't read it, give it a shot. So we'll have a link in the show notes for a link to the Amazon page for this particular series, and if you feel like helping the author out, feel free to do so. In other LitRPG news, we have the GameLit Society has recently interviewed LitRPG author Eden Red. Nice, fun interview to kind of a just question and answer written format kind of interview. So have a link in the show notes for that particular interview. And in LitRPG sales this weekend, with so many people stuck at home under quarantine, social distancing, a lot of us are just sitting home reading. And that's great, except that it can be super expensive. So we have a few novels for you here, just a couple, unfortunately, that have specifically dropped their prices to their novels for you folks in quarantine. That's going to include Somnia Online. That actual book has a recent 6th book out now, but the author has put books 1 through 3 on sale for 99 cents, books 3 through 5 on sale for $1.99. So not quite free, but super affordable. Plus, they all have audiobooks, so get those things on sale. And if you're an audiobook fan, you can get a whole bunch of audiobooks at discount with Amazon and Audible's Whisper Sync program. So fun stuff. Also in the same line of visiting, Super Mage is the first book in that series is out for 99 cents as well. Recently released a later book in that series. And of course, as always, we'll have a link in the show notes for you folks who just want to do a search through all the listings for LitRPG and prices lowest to highest, which includes the $0 first and the 99 cents. Link in the show notes for that particular search algorithm link for you guys to enjoy. But again, just remember, results may vary. There's a lot of stuff in there that's not actually LitRPG or is on perma-free. So there you go. Okay, on to stuff that's out now. We have Sean Oswald's The Watcher's Test is out right now for you to enjoy. The actual novel, remember we're reviewing the prequel short story for this version called The Quell, Destiny Rising. Book 1 is out for you to enjoy. First Sorcerer, Singularity Online is also out for you. The 6th book in the Realm Between series is out for you to enjoy. The 5th book in the Arcane Kingdom Online series is out as well, as is book 5 in the Rise to Omniscience series. There you go. And also a new book from Stuart New. The latest book in the Into the Black series from Stuart Gross is out. This is number 24 in the series. Stuart is definitely pumping those out. Just as an FYI, this is a more mature book. Last I read it, sexual content, graphic violence, all that good stuff, if you enjoy that, but still set in a RPG world. Okay, in audiobooks, we got some new stuff as well, including Team Noob, Sun and Shadow Online book number 1. Sean Oswald was able to get his audiobook and his ebook out at the same time. So good for you. So the Watcher's Chest is out as an audiobook as well for you. And Traveling Dungeon, the second book in that series, is out for you to enjoy as an audiobook as well. So we recently reviewed book number 2 as an ebook, enjoyed it immensely. Book number 2 is out as an audiobook for you to enjoy as well. Okay, upcoming LitRPG is where I just read out all the stuff that's coming out in the near future so you can plan your reading schedule, see when your favorite books are coming out, save up for them, or if you're an author, plan your release schedule around some names. On April 20th, it'll be After Apocalypse, Dungeons and Perdition, book number 3. April 24th, The Winter Harvest. April 28th, the 4th book in the Rogue Dungeon series. April 29th is going to be Discardium, book number 4. April 29th as well is going to be Player Reaches the Top, book number 3. April 30th, Legends Online, book number 5. May 1st is going to be The Completionist Chronicles, book number 5. On May the 5th, it'll be The Blood Crown, book number 2. Our Coming Online is going to be book number 4, will be out on May the 8th. Eternal Online, book number 1, Shattered Sword. It's going to be out on May the 12th. Again, remember that this one has an audiobook that's already out for you to enjoy if you want to check it out that way first. The 4th book in the Luminous series will be out on May 17th. On May 17th, it'll also be Biomedical Self-Engineering, book number 1. On May the 20th, the 5th book in the Chandler's Call series. May 31st, Glory, Formation, and Power, book number 4. May something. The authors of Legendary Dungeon CSS will be publishing in May some point. June the 4th, it'll be the 9th book in the Good Guy series called 4 Beheadings and a Funeral. On June the 6th, it'll be Reality Matters, book number 6. On July the 1st, it'll be the 9th book in the System Apocalypse series. July the 8th, it'll be the Project Stellar, book number 2. On July 31st, the 1st book in the Vindication 2.0 series. August the 8th, War of the Posers, The Bad Guys, book number 4. And August the 18th, it'll be Intellectium, book number 1. So there we go. All kinds of stuff for you guys to enjoy. On to new releases and reviews. And first up this week, it's going to be Apocalypse Gates, book number 6, called Can of Worms, written by Daniel Schinhofen. It is 492 pages, $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. After making several profitable deals, it was time to go back through the tour gate and return to Earth. Alvin and Gothie had been surprised to learn that the newest member of their harem was a princess, but neither was willing to leave Desiree behind. Once they were back on Earth, Alvin proposed a new destination, much to the amusement of his companions. They all agreed and went south out of Colorado into New Mexico. The road south led them back to old friends and new places. Johnny, the native shaman from Bridgeport, was in Ignacio and in desperate need of help. Stepping on their boots and loading their guns, the slightly demented but equally fun group got ready for one of the biggest can of worms they had opened so far. This book contains subtle situations and all their horror and glory, including Melissa's sex abuse, drug use, and murder. It also contains graphic sex, which portrays elements of BDSM and harem. You've been warned. So there you go. Also, for disclosure, I received a copy of the book for review. I purchased a copy when it became available. I got a review copy like a day early. But it's important that you guys know this. Okay, this is the 6th book in the Apocalypse Gate series, and it continues the slice of life adventures. And in this particular novel, it's almost a travelogue, where Alvin and the group travel to Roswell, New Mexico, and then across country to Washington, D.C., or towards that direction. And they stop in a variety of towns and talk to various leaders and people. And it's this weird, I won't say weird, it's just this different kind of travel story where they're just kind of popping in almost each day or each chapter into a new town, into a new place, and there are different little like mini adventures that they kind of go through, but they all kind of start the same way, where it's like, oh, look at the elf, look at the dwarf, oh my gosh, are they threats? And then the main character explains all the things about the RPG apocalypse that's happened, and it's kind of this recurring gag, almost this Groundhog Day-esque beginning to each one of these little stories. And for me, it got a little repetitive after like the 3rd or 4th time, but it's kind of necessary as to kind of describe their journey across the country, because obviously nothing some things are going to happen. But that's kind of what the travelogue story is. But there is still fighting, there's RPG progression, there's a bit of questing. In particular, I really enjoyed the first quest, the beginning of the novel with the Native Americans. And I kind of like the story the most when they stuck around an area for a little bit. That's when the bigger fights happened. That's when like the bigger, longer quest occurred. And I had a kind of chance to mix with the communities and do a little more world building for those areas. But again, they're literally crossing the entire United States. And so there's just an opportunity for a variety of cultures to kind of be explored, and how those little nuggets are dealing with the RPG apocalypse. And you don't always get that in the middle section. So it's like, oh, okay. But like I said, enjoyable story. And also just to be aware, I can't believe I still have to say this in every review. There's sex in this novel. It's not a lot. It's like 5% of the overall story maybe, but it is graphic. It is there. It's been here for most of the series. And it's very skippable. Like those sections are very isolated. They're kind of marked off. And you can skip them. I do. It's not something I particularly enjoy my reading of a little bit stories. But I like the rest of the stuff enough to kind of literally just kind of skip over it when it pops out. Other people really enjoy it. Overall, the story kind of feels like a transition novel. There's a lot of setup for other big things that may be happening in the series, and it's a fine read. It's not my favorite in the series, just because, again, there's like this middle to late section where it's just kind of this traveling thing, and there's just not as not big of an opportunity for interesting quests, and it feels like it's slightly repetitive. But overall, still had a good time with it, just not my favorite in the series. Gets a score of 7.3 out of 10. That's Can of Worms, Apocalypscape's Author's Cut, book number 6, with a score of 7.3 out of 10. And next we have Carrion, The Rise of the Black Seraph, a dark fantasy LitRPG world apocalypse calamity dungeon. That's such a long, unnecessary title. Written by Andrew O'Keefe. It is 305 pages, $2.99, available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. The end of the world has arrived. Luca Fernandez was lucky to escape the slaughter that was Emergence Day, when monsters overwhelmed the world. By plan or by luck, Luca was granted the legendary power of the Angel of Death, and thus then thrust into the fantastic and terrible inner realm of the World Dungeon. He has but one task: to survive and win the Genesis game. But if he is to win, Luca will need to learn that not all monsters are obvious, and the path to power is rarely straightforward, corrupting all those who seek it. Can Luca learn to meet the perils of the World Dungeon and begin to forge trustworthy alliances to survive this cruel and merciless world? Or will he fall into the dark dwellers of this world? Can he grow his power strong enough to defeat the World Dungeon's deadliest denizens? When partnerships are short-lived and often corrupted by fear and malice, how will Luca ensure he does not succumb? And in the novel description, there's also a bunch of tags saying, "This is the best dark fantasy story ever, and it's an amazing writing trip from the author. How does he?" And advertise things like that, which I kind of found that to be quite true, for me at least. For me, this is an apocalypse dungeon story that frankly takes too long to go into any RPG progression. It's dark, but honestly, that aspect got kind of boring for me. Like it feels like it's just dark to be dark as like this, character as this trait, but there's no real depth to explain why it's a dark story. It just kind of shifts gears suddenly in the beginning of the novel, and suddenly everybody's super evil and selfish, and there's no real like transition between, oh, people are normal, some are good, some are bad, some are decent. It's just revs up into high gear of like everybody's a selfish jerk and they're gonna betray you, and there's not really an explanation. So it kind of felt like that dark aspect was it didn't make sense to me, and it didn't like feel natural and real to my brain anyways. But even more than that, I kind of got bored with the story, waiting for the RPG aspects to occur. They do eventually occur. This is a little bit of story. It's definitely set up as like all the RPG mechanics are baked into this world after about the 20% mark of the story. So it does take a little while to get to anything kind of RPG related. And it kind of sets up as the main character, who's a kid who can't walk. He's thrown into a dungeon and bonds with the dark deity and gaining these RPG powers that are loaded over by the alien invading elves in this dungeon. And from the 23% mark on, it's essentially a dungeon dive. the main character is stuck in a dungeon. I guess he could technically leave. He doesn't. But he's there with these new powers, as the angel death, as the novel description says. And he's tasked with like becoming more powerful. But a lot of the story is kind of this world building, and I mean by a lot, I mean like 80% of this novel is essentially like this world building of the dungeon and these characters and these like kind of separate factions, and like a little bit of explanation of what this permanent world dungeon is, and it, while it's not like poorly written, I just wasn't particularly invested in anybody enough to care like about all the details. And probably it's setting up a lot of the larger series role potentially, but for me, it just, a lot of the selfish behavior and this dark energy and this darkness just again didn't make sense, and so a lot of the setup is just like it just kind of took way too much time. Like honestly, it just wasn't an interesting story to me up until the point where they actually do a dungeon dive, which is again 80% in the novel before they even do one particular thing. And so it was just not as enjoyable as I was hoping it was going to be. Another thing that kind of bugged me about the story was kind of these emotional mental inconsistency with the main character. In the beginning of the story, he's a whiny kid. He's a teen. The apocalypse RPG happens and he's thrown into the dungeon and he's transformed. He gets these powers and he gets a race change to this Nephilim man, this angel death kind of a class. But in between those two kind of time frames, his thoughts and his mental internal dialogue also changed dramatically from, again, whiny child, whiny teen, to a parent adult, badass and bitter and driven for vengeance and power. And it just, again, there's this kind of the contrast where there's no transition in between explaining this change. It felt like different characters, different stories sometimes. And so for me, it was just kind of like the schism, like, this doesn't make sense in my brain considering what I just read before. And that was kind of one of the things that bugged me. And in addition to that, again, the main character doesn't actually gain power by his own will and effort for the most of the story. It was just a little disappointing. The main character he's just thrust into this power situation where he gets his powers from Dark ED, and then he's power leveled by this guild he joins, or by his summons, and right up until, and he's supposed to be like this overpowered, badass character, but he doesn't actually do anything. Like literally, he doesn't do anything. He kind of follows people along and learns information about the world, and these different factions and these humans versus elves, whatever the case is. And until like you're 70-80% of the story, he's not actually actively doing really anything. And he doesn't do anything really badass until like the very, very end of the story. And yet the end of the story is actually pretty decent. It's actually good. And it's actually good enough to almost redeem the story for me. At the last minute, there's a betrayal and there's a badass response. And that was kind of the story I was hoping to see the entire thing. And it's just, by that point, I was like, I was a little checked out and it just didn't work for me overall. The end is good. I'll say the end is good, but the rest of it was just like, I was just kind of bored. And so for me, it gets scored 6 out of 10, most because 80% of the novel just didn't work for me. And even if I did enjoy the last like 10-15%. So there you go. That's Carrion Crow, Rise of the Black Seraph, a dark fantasy LitRPG with a score of 6 out of 10. And next we have Quell, the Destiny Rising, a LitRPG series prequel written by Lachlan Wells. It is 47 pages, 99 cents as of the recording here, and it's available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. A LitRPG that destroys the boundaries of the known world. Do you like to be whisked away into a new LitRPG world of wildness? Then read on. Enter the Quell. When the reckoning came, the world was plunged into the fantasy realm of Quell. Those who remember the old worlds would say that it's like those old video games they used to play, only with the threat of death. Those in the Quell would say it has given them a life of freedom, while it has robbed some of everything they have. In the Quell, it's fight or die, and Adriana Swan aimed to live. Ever since her uncle got kidnapped by cultists, she has set off on her own quest of freedom and answers. The Quell is vast and full of horrors, pushing one's might to the brink of insanity. Adriana has never been too worried, though. Her uncle taught her everything she knew, and nothing was going to get between her and get between her and finding answers. There you go. But how far is one girl willing to go to unlock the secrets of the world that everyone has known for so long? What sacrifices have made them get what she wants and is willing? What sacrifices have to be made, rather, to get what she wants, and is she willing to make them? And it says, this book is just a prequel, the taste of what the Quell might bring. I have so much for you, blah, blah. Okay, so the author describes this as a prequel. It kind of feels more like the start of a serial story. And that's mostly because this story is 44 pages. The first book in the series, I think, is like 140 something pages. So it's not very long as the full book is either. So it kind of feels like a serial story. Serial series rather. It's just kind of a short story that introduces the main character, sets up a couple quests, and has a little bit of fighting, and then hits the to be continued button. There is a little bit of inconsistency in the world building that kind of bugged my brain. The prologue sets up the story universe as like this RPG apocalypse happened, where all the rules of the world change, technology stops working, monsters appear, and everyone becomes a player and got access to the RPG system. But the story after the prologue kind of makes the story feel like it's more of a video game or tabletop fantasy RPG story, with the main character having lived in like this fantasy world where up until her teens, and then her uncle is kidnapped and she gets a origin story quest and becomes a player. It was a conflict in my brain that was hard for me to resolve, just because one kind of sets us different expectations than the other one. So because the prologue felt like it was setting up an RPG apocalypse story, that's what I was expecting. And so when it wasn't that in the actual rest of the short story, I felt a little disappointed just because of the expectations that I had in my brain, whether the author's intent or not, weren't being fulfilled. And so it took me a while to kind of shift gears in my brain. It's not a real apocalypse story. It's really feels more like a tabletop fantasy story. And that's perfectly cool. It's just it made it harder for me to enjoy the story, especially since it is so short. Even the term Quell in the story, the name of the story, had me scratching my head sometimes. Sometimes it was used to describe like an event, the RPG apocalypse. Other times it felt like it was a physical location. And other times it felt like it was a state of being, like, oh, they're being part of the game itself was the Quell, as opposed to the main character's existence before she got her origin story quest. She wasn't part of the Quell, you know what I mean? And so these different uses of that phrase were just, and that's kind of a theme throughout the early portion of the story where it's unclear what it was. And so my brain was like, not sure what to expect, which impacted my ability to enjoy the story. The game mechanics side of things, it's mixed. I mean, yes, the world is set in a fully RPG world where people have classes and levels and quests and various skill checks, all that exist in the story. And there are RPG characters in the story where they're like NPCs, and players are very clearly differentiated, but not all of that really meshes the same in the story. For example, all the saves checks and the perception checks, notifications aren't actually acknowledged, and they feel like they're kind of pulled from a tabletop game, because they're shown as like, oh, actual roles, where like, oh, the main character makes a roll, but you're adding in her proficiencies in whatever characteristic or skill or stat it was to see if she fails or makes the skill check, which is perfectly fine. I've seen other stories, but what kind of bothered my brain was that the main character never acknowledged that she saw those. So for me, it felt like, oh, those only existed for me, the reader, which conflicted with the other notifications in the story that were acknowledged as part of the game mode, which included like quest descriptions, loot descriptions, leveling, character sheets, which were all actually seen by the main character. So there were almost two different levels of these notifications, some of which are apparently part of the game world, and others felt like they weren't. And again, there's one thing that didn't make sense in my brain. Beyond those consistencies, story's not bad. It really isn't. The main character has a clear quest line. The action isn't half bad once you get to it. There is potential for some good world building here, but it's also a short story, so there's not exactly a lot of space for to make a judgment on. I'm not sure how the longer story is going to be, even though it's not like too much longer. It's about 3 times the size of the short story, so kind of a novella. but the short story had a much potential where I'm like, okay, overall I kind of liked it. It was okay. It's not like super amazing, but like, oh, there's some decent storytelling and there's some decent RPG action. I'm not sure where exactly it's gonna go. I'm like, okay, I'm willing to take a flyer on a larger story potentially. So for me, it scores 7.2 out of 10. That's still a good rating. It's just like, oh, that's super amazing. That's the Quell Destiny Rising with a score of 7.2 out of 10. Okay, next is going to be Eastbound in Town, LitRPG GameLit Adventure, the Good Guy series, book number 8, written by Eric Ugland. It is 345 pages, $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. Freshly respawned, far from home, all alone. Up until now, Montana's journey really only went in one direction, up. But now he's back to square one, stuck at the top of a mountain with only the most basic gear to help him get back to Conch Shell. It's going to be a long walk, but not a boring one. In one of LitRPG's most legendary medieval fantasy and road trips, Montana encounters a pack of just this side of feral wolf people, a town straight out of the Wild West, complete with heavy-handed sheriff, a lion desperately trying to make a colossal fish monster, ancient cursed ruins, and a giant flying frog. So there we go. This is that's a fine description of what the story actually is. It's a romping good adventure. That's how I described it. Montana continues to kick butt and make monster friends. The 8th book in the series continues the slice of life adventures of Montana Conch Shell. The first part of the story resolves the whole sent to a demon dimension cliffhanger from the last book, and the main character goes on a solo journey for a while. There's still a bit of RPG community building towards the end of the novel, and his kingdom expands and new threats are set up for the series, and that's kind of what this is. The first, I want to say, portion of the story is really like this travel log of like, oh, the main character's reset at the place he started in book 1, and he has to kind of find his way back to his town, and he's going in different directions, so he's encountering new people, so he has like these new little mini adventures, and it's all very fun, adventurous reading. It doesn't advance the series plotting very much, though, which is perfectly fine. Not every story in this series does. Remember, this is a slice of life series where you're just kind of following the main character as he goes on adventures. Sometimes there's like plot advancement, sometimes there's not, but a lot of what the story is in this one is it's setup. There's a lot of setup for future storylines, different characters, different threats to the community's building, different political encounters potentially set up as well, and that's a lot of what this is. It's still very enjoyable, but that's kind of the most common complaint in like the Amazon reviews, that nothing really happens with the plot, and I'm like, yeah, that's true. It's just, but there's still good action adventure for the main character. There's still good fights. There's still good interactions between the main character and other people, other races, other communities, and then, just it's still enjoyable. It gets a score of 7.6 out of 10 for me. Eastbound in Town, Good Guys book number 8 with a score of 7.6 out of 10. And that is it for the show, ladies and gentlemen. Hit all the reviews, have all the news, all done. Thank you very much for listening, for watching. Remember, if you want to support the podcast in any way, shape, or form, you can find all the ways you do so at litrpgpodcast.com/support. You can also follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, YouTube, and Patreon. We'll have links in the show notes for the LitRPG podcast stuff. We also have a whole back catalog of reviews. We're pushing, I think, over 1,000 reviews at this point in the years that we've done this show, and they're all at the litrpgpodcast.com website for you to enjoy under LitRPG recommendations. So plenty of things to search for to find good, fun series that you can enjoy from us, or that we have reviewed, rather. There you go, links there. Thanks again for hanging out with me this week. Until we can hang out again, folks, remember to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.